Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome all of you to the August 14th meeting of the Columbia Rotary Club. I am so glad to be back here with all of you today. Let's go ahead and get started with Rusty and Audrey on National Anthem. Thank you, Audrey and Rusty. And I'm going to call Catherine Davis up here to do our invocation.
Good afternoon. Please join me in prayer. Almighty God, today we reach out to you for guidance, serenity, and peace after national and international chaos permeates in our world. We are truly in need of continual practice and celebration of Rotary International's four-way test, as it is what makes our organization so different from others and serves as the premise for living a blessed and peaceful life. As we stress the importance of the concepts of the four-way test in our daily living, we pray that you help us remember that we must always watch our thoughts because they become words, and Lord, we pray for good words, that they always represent the truth, that we choose our words carefully because they become actions, and Lord, we pray for good actions, that they are fair to all concerned, that we understand our actions because they become habits, and Lord, we pray for good habits, as they do build goodwill and better friendships. That we study our habits because they become character. And Lord, we pray for great character, that our character will help us to always be mindful of that which is beneficial to all concerned. That we develop good character, for it becomes our destiny. And this is all important because our destiny is to be of great service to others and to you, Lord. Lord, we thank you again for gathering us safely in this place today and for allowing us the privilege of breaking bread together and the opportunity to learn something from our speaker, Congressman Duncan. We ask that you bless the food, those who prepared it, and may it nourish our bodies, our minds, and our hearts, that we may do your service, always guided in part by the Rotary four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for that wonderful prayer, Catherine. You always do such a wonderful job. Now I'd like to call Don Whitley up here. Don is one of our newer Rotarians, so if you have not had the opportunity to shake his hand when you walk through the door, please try to do so.
Good afternoon, welcome everybody. We have a few visitors with us today. We have Butch Wallace from West Metro. Where's Butch?
Probably still on the line.
Getting something to eat.
Okay.
There he is.
Where is it?
There he is.
Right here.
Okay, here it is. We have Jim Hudson from Columbia East. Jim. We have Rick Adkins from Anderson. Where's Rick? And we have Scott Stevens from Greenville. Do we have any guests today? Somebody.
Bernie Maybank, Tommy and Wright, would you like to guess? She works for Tony Dooney Public Defender.
I'm Carl Byers. I'm pleased to introduce my guest today, Andy Shane, the Columbia Bureau Chief for the Post-Courier. Welcome in.
Is that all? Good. Welcome, everybody. Have a good lunch.
Thank you, Don. The cart buckets, they're on the tables. They weren't here when you got here, but they're on the tables now. So if you would please remember to fill those cart buckets with a little bit of change. Ladies, go down at the bottom of your purses and get all the change out of the bottom of your purses. And let's try to keep up with those as much as we can and keep that money coming in. It goes to a very good cause. Now, I have a great surprise for all of you, or entertainment for all of you today. Our friend Terrence Garrick is here to do health and happiness. And he looks incredibly sharp today. So if everybody will please welcome Terrence to the podium for a little bit of entertainment.
I am honeymoon happy and peacock proud to be before you today. John F. Kennedy made a profound statement. He said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That kind of motivated me after this weekend and all the events that were taking place in this great nation, that today I would like for us to just focus on unconditional love. Because I thought about all the things that are going on in our world today. Unconditional love is the paramount and the thing that can make things better for all of us. I thought about it's so easy to love someone that looks like you, dress like you, walk like you, talk like you. That's why I guess I love Rusty the Task. You got to understand that for 7 years, I admired Rusty for the way he dressed, for his sense of humor, but also always being a friend to me. And I thought about that. I thought about all the things that were going on, and I thought about our nation and how we need to come together. But also I thought about the roles of a Rotarian, what we're all about. And I looked at the 4-way test, and I thought about all the things that we do every day. So I'm really here just to remind you and to keep you to remind you to keep doing the work that you do each and every day and each and every week. Is to show unconditional love. To reach out to one another, reach out to individuals that do not look like you. People who need your help, people that you can make a major impact in their lives. And it didn't dawn on me until about 2 years ago. I had the opportunity where I was here about 2 years ago, my mother had passed. And when my mom passed, of course, when you're taking care of your mom when she's sick, throughout those moments, you become closer and closer because you're telling stories and you're sharing those precious moments. But then we had the funeral service, and as I was giving the remarks at my mom's homegoing, I noticed someone in the audience, and as I was looking out in the audience, and I realized there was a brother there that I never met. And I was actually shocked, and I was like, wow, I saw him, and he was much taller than I was, and he had somewhat a receding forehead, and I was like, okay, and he's much lighter complexion than I was. And then after the service, my family members came to me and said, did you recognize the individual that was at Mom's funeral? And I said, well, I think that was my brother. And they said, well, wow, they said, he totally looked different. And I thought about it, and I kept saying, well, yeah, he does look different. I'm going to go there and speak to him because he's my brother that I never met. And then I realized when I went up there to touch him on the back to get him to turn around, the brother I'm talking about is Mr. Elliott Power. And I never told Elliott then what that meant to me. Because see, Elliott showed to me it wasn't about the black race, it wasn't about the white race, it was more about the human race. He was there for his brother. He was there for his Rotarian. He was there for an individual that he respected. And he came to my mom's homegoing. And so when I looked at what was taking place in Charlottesville this weekend, I thought about, that's the type of love that they need. They need a brother like Elliott Power. They need a brother like all the Rotarians here. All the individuals that you right here come in contact with. Every time I come up here, it's so easy to talk to you all because guess what? I truly believe in what you do for your community and what you do for this great city. I'm very elated today because I believe in what the great Congressman, what he does for the 3rd District. There's no doubt in my mind. And I think I have the pedigree and I think I have the history, the credentials to talk about it. Served 22 honorable years in the U.S. military, Army Special Forces. And so I thought about it more and more that you needed to hear that you represent a lot. You all understand when Nathan Hale said in 1776, September the 22nd, he said, my only regret that I only have one life to give to my country. Do you realize he was only 21 years of age? That's the same patriotism that all of you all have and carry within yourselves. And that's the patriotism that we got to have today. So we got to come together and start loving one another. I made a decision Friday on my birthday. I turned 40 years of age. Okay, 53 years of age. Then I'm going to start loving everyone. Stevie Wonder said, if you have a heart, love somebody. But if you have a bigger heart, love everybody. So I'm going to love you whether you're white or black. I'm going to love you if you're straight or gay. I'm going to love you if you're a Democrat or Republican. I'm going to love you if you're tall or short. I'm going to love you more if you wear a silk sucker suit. This is all about love. And then lastly, yesterday I had the opportunity to speak at a 50th anniversary, marriage anniversary. And I was so curious of how did it last so long. And the husband said, you won't believe this, Terrence. We never had an argument in 50 years. He says, from the day of our honeymoon, we never had an argument. I said, how could you do that? He said, well, when we grew up in the country, and we were getting on our horse and buggy for our honeymoon. And he said it was so awesome that my wife said, get it up, and the horse didn't move. My wife said, that's one. And then it took off, finally the horse took off, and the horse stopped again. And the wife said, that's two. And then the horse kept trotting along, and then the horse stopped one more time. The wife got out of the horse, of the buggy, got down, pulled out her revolver, and shot the horse. The husband said, I cannot believe you did that. That horse was taking us to our honeymoon. She said, that's one. The second question I had for him, I said, for 50 years, what did you do to keep it interesting? What did you do to make it so exciting? He said, well, we went places, we did things. He said, for our 25th anniversary, I took her to the Philippines. I said, wow, so what you gonna do for the 50th anniversary? I didn't mention to you. He said, well, I'm going back together. And so, I share those stories with you about love. because that's what it's going to take for us to come together. Love has been so important. Love goes unanswered. Love is pure. Love is innocent. But love, most important, changes hearts. Let's encourage one another, even if we have differences, even if we disagree to agree. We move on, but we come together. I can assure you, if we have to do something with North Korea, I can assure you we'll come together as a nation. We'll demonstrate the same thing that was demonstrated years ago when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. In this great state of South Carolina, they said lines was lined up at recruiting officers, like for mouths. We came together as a nation, and we can come again together during this time, during these crises, and during this moment. Two announcements that I must make. First, our very own Ron Rhines, the president of Midlands Technical College, was just appointed to serve on the prominent national board of American Association of Community Colleges. That's the leading proponent for the Voices for Community College. Please give him a round of applause. And then immediately after this meeting, with the past presidents, would like to go down here to the end of the hall where the blue curtains and meet for a little short meeting right after our Rotarian luncheon. And then last but not least, I have to leave you with just one last thing. I ask you all to love someone and love them unconditionally. And then remember this, I love you all. And guess what? You can't do nothing about it but love me back.
Thank you, Terrence. Always love it when Terrence does Health and Happiness. I wanted to introduce someone to you guys. This is Scott Stevens coming up here from the Greenville Rotary. He is the president of the Greenville Rotary, and he and I have had the pleasure of attending PETS together, President-elect training. I had to go to his district to do my training this year because of the conflict, and the Greenville Club is very similar to our club in size, and they do some wonderful things in Rotary up in Greenville, so I just wanted to let him introduce himself to you real quick and talk about some things that maybe we want to do together.
Thank you, President Carey. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and introduce myself. And I love Rotary. I love Rotarians. I love the fact that I can come to another city and visit a Rotary Club and be welcomed by like-minded people, people that care about the community, people that want to invest in the community. You know, our clubs are very similar. You just celebrated your centennial, November of 2016. We celebrated our centennial, March of 2016. That does make us the oldest club in South Carolina. I'm not too sure that we're the largest club in South Carolina. We've been battling that one back and forth for a long time. But the one thing that is undeniable is that both of our clubs have made a huge difference in the communities that we live in. We give back to the community in ways that have made a foundational difference in both Greenville and Columbia. And I want to thank you for that. I'm proud of that for Greenville County. Rotarians do make a difference in our community. Rotarians are part of the fabric of every community. So I hope that you're proud to be a Rotarian. I know that I am. And I'm excited to be here with you today. I look forward to the future. I think that our two clubs can come together and perhaps do some projects together that would make a big impact on the mid-state and upstate. Perhaps we can get one of the smaller clubs down in the low state to be a part of this project. We'll make an impact throughout the entire state of South Carolina. But just continue doing what you do, because it is significant, it is making a difference, and it is making Rotary a significant powerhouse in the state of South Carolina. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak.
Thank you, Scott. I think it depends on what day of the week or the month, depending on who has a larger club, right, as far as the membership goes. I've enjoyed working with Scott a lot through some of the training that I've had in the last, I don't know, year, 18 months, however long my president-elect, 10 years, however long that is. So I've enjoyed that very much. And right now, I'm going to go ahead and ask Rusty DePass to come on up here and introduce our speaker.
Thank you very much, President Carey, and I want to point out before I introduce Jeff that Rick Atkins, who is a member of the Anderson Rotary Club, who was introduced earlier, is Home Secretary. Is that a fair title? And works for Jeff, so that's the reason he's here. We welcome you, delighted to have you. And also, I think Edie Willard, I saw Edie Willard come in, and I had invited her to come as my guest. So anyway, I guess that means I'll have to go out there and pay for her lunch I first got to know Jeff Duncan when he was a member of the State House of Representatives representing Lawrence County. I'm not really sure where he lives because he's a member of the Joanna Lions Club, the Clinton Kiwanis Club, and the Whitmire Goodfellas Club. But anyway, he lives somewhere up there, and he was born in Ware Shoals. So we have that in common. His father worked for Regal, my father worked for Regal, and in fact my sister was born when they lived in Ware Shoals. But she had to go to Greenwood because there was no hospital facility in Ware Shoals at the time. But a great little community, and Jeff lives in Clinton and is a deacon in the First Baptist Church there. He's been married for 28 years. And has 3 sons, which I would consider a perfect family. He was elected to Congress in 2010 and has been really on the cutting edge of some of the economic legislation that has been introduced. He is a member of the Committee on Homeland Security and also the Committee on Foreign Affairs. He's gotten all kinds of awards from the Club for Growth and the Guardian of Small Business and so forth. He is the chairman of the subcommittee on the Western Hemisphere. And since that's where we are, we're glad you're chairman of that committee. Anyway, Jeff was elected to Congress in 2010. And most recently, I don't know if he will bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up. You may recall that he was, I think with another congressman, leaving the baseball field, and the shooter in Alexandria actually spoke to him and asked him if that was the Republicans' practice of baseball. And then, of course, we all know what happened after that. So it's been an exciting time, I'm sure. I've been trying to get Jeff here ever since he was elected to Congress, and I'm delighted. I'm exhausted, but I'm delighted that he's finally here. So please welcome Jeff Duncan.
Yeah, Rusty has been trying to get me here for 7 years, but Rick Atkins is my district director, and my staff will tell you that when you get pulled out of the district, you're not in front of the people that vote for you, and sometimes it's very, very difficult to get away. When we're only we're on August recess now, and my schedule really crams a lot of stuff in for 5 weeks, and then when we're home, the way the congressional schedule is now is different than what it had been in the past. Before I got elected, the House would meet on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Usually had Monday and Friday either to fly home or up to D.C. And then when you were home, Mondays and Fridays to do all the meetings that congressmen have to do. So when we took over the House in 2010 election, 2011, Kevin McCarthy decided to change that up. So now we're in Washington 3 weeks during the month, and in the districts 1 week during the month. So that gives us 7, 8 days, a lot of times continuous days, to do rotaries, Kiwanis, to do a lot of the constituent meetings that we do, plant tours, and just understanding what's going on in the district. We like that better, but that does give the scheduler plenty of time to schedule a lot of meetings for us. First off, let me just condemn what happened in Charlottesville yesterday. There's no place in America where hatred and bigotry, the kind of violence we saw from both camps, on both sides of the spectrum, the extremism that we have witnessed and for too long now, and the act of terror that happened yesterday with the gentleman using his car as a weapon. It's kind of ISIS-inspired to use a vehicle as a weapon, and that's something we've got to be cognizant of now when large groups gather for whatever, that a vehicle could be used by a terrorist in any instance, whether an episode like in Charlottesville or an ISIS-inspired foreign group act of terror. It's just changing the way we live in America. Just like 9/11 changed the way we do things, we're seeing more and more different events around the globe change the way we peacefully assemble, the way we enjoy ball games, the way we enjoy each other. Churches are going to more security. Ball games, you're having to go through metal detectors, whether that's at Williams-Brice, Cumming, or Clemson, or the Charlotte Panther Stadium. I remember when I went to the Clemson ACC championship game in Charlotte a couple of years ago, it took forever to get in the stadium because you had to go through a metal detector. Then you had to hold your keys and your wallet and everything out of your pockets to be wanded. And I lost something that night that I dropped during that process. So anyway, what I'm saying is just change our way of life, and that's a shame. That's what terrorism tries to do. And so anyway, I wanted to touch base on that. It's not right anywhere. It's not right wherever it occurs, and we need to change our rhetoric and tone across America. And I look at myself very introspectively, because the Scripture says to take the log out of your own eye before you try to take the fleck out of someone else's. And I think that's a good Scripture verse to think about as we move forward from Saturday all across America. So I want to thank Rusty for getting me here. 7 years it's taken, and it's quite an honor to stand in front of this Rotary. I'll speak at the Clinton Rotary tomorrow, Rick. Clinton Rotary tomorrow, and be a smaller group, but the topics will be very much the same. Congress, we've had a rocky start since January. We came in with a lot of high hopes, having the House, Republicans having the House, the Senate, and the White House for once, but we are hampered by some of the Senate rules, which require a supermajority or 60 votes to pass general legislation. It was that way on judicial nominees up until just this year. It is still that way on regular legislation, and so when big things have to happen, such as Obamacare repeal and replace, it requires 60 votes unless a mechanism is used, such as budget reconciliation, which is what, if you go back to 2009, 2010, Democrats used budget reconciliation to finally get Obamacare and its full implementation across the finish line. So it has been used before. It's not a new mechanism that Republicans are doing, but that is the way that they had hoped to get 51 votes in the Senate. House passed a bill over the Senate. They worked on it for a little while, and then they couldn't get 51 votes necessary. So Obamacare repeal and replace is at least sitting idle. I want to say it's dead because Senator Graham's got a plan he talked about all across the state this week, and I look forward to looking at it. That one of the big things is that block grants money to the states for Medicaid based on a per capita basis. And we'll see. That's one thing that Republicans have talked about, at least during the Obamacare debate this spring, for how to handle Medicaid funding and block grants in general. And so we'll see if his legislation has any sort of merit. One thing that I have tried to do is ask my leadership and my colleagues, look, in 2015, we passed a 2015-2016 budget reconciliation bill that repealed Obamacare and actually passed it out of the House and the Senate and went all the way to President Obama's desk, and he vetoed it. If we were willing to send that bill to President Obama, why aren't we willing to send that bill to President Trump? And there is an issue right now called a discharge petition that is being put forth to discharge the duties of the House, really force leadership to do something with that bill, that 2015 bill, whether to bring it up for a vote, Senate committee, but there are a lot of members that are going to sign now that it is laid on the desk for a number of days. It's open for members to get back and sign that discharge petition and really try to force leadership's hand to move on something else with regard to Obamacare, repeal and replace. And we know the ACA is failing all across the country. In South Carolina, we have lost all of our providers except one. We have one provider in South Carolina, and that's Blue Cross Blue Shield. Although I like Blue Cross Blue Shield, I don't like the fact that we only have choice and plans offered by one company. When you only have one company, then you don't have choice except for whatever they decide to sell. When you only have one company, you don't have choice in pricing except for what they choose to price those products at. Competition provides more choice, that's more options for you and your family, and that's different pricing options. To choose the plan that best suits you and a price that meets your budget, to meet your health care needs or health insurance needs for you and your family. I hope we can get back to that, where we have more choice, whether that's across state line sales, the Geico model where you can shop for insurance in Texas or Louisiana, companies that should be able to provide, if they meet the regulations in South Carolina's Insurance Commission, be able to provide or offer those products for sale here in South Carolina. We'll see if that happens. That's one thing, as I'll mention in a minute about the debt ceiling, I hope we can attach to the debt ceiling increase. But so that's sort of where we are on Obamacare, just kind of sitting idle as members go back to their district for the month of August. Really listen to the folks around their districts on what they feel about how the House and the Senate have operated and what we have gotten done or not gotten done in the last 7 months, and hopefully come back in September, regroup to do something for the American people with regard to the health insurance aspect. But we have a lot on our plate in the month of September. Now keep in mind, with the holiday of Labor Day and with the weekends, there's probably only about 17 true legislative days in the month of September. And in September we don't have a budget for the nation yet, so we need to have a budget so that we can maybe have another reconciliation bill to get tax reform. We want to get tax reform done, and I'm going to touch base on tax reform in just a second. But as I'm talking about September, we need a budget. We break government funding into 12 different appropriations bills, so you break government into little bites that you can manage. That's like Department of Defense, that's Intel or Intelligence, that's military construction and VA, that is Department of Homeland Security, Department of Interior, Energy and Water, and the list goes on those 12 appropriations bills. And we're supposed to bring each of those bills to the floor and actually vote on those independently, where amendments can be offered, and we've gotten through 4. We did what we call a security bus or a mini bus, which was a conglomeration of 4 appropriations bills into one. Although we debated each one of them separately, they passed the House as one package. And that was Department of Defense, Military Construction and VA was a second one, Department of Homeland Security, and Intel or Intelligence, all the FBI and CIA aspects with regard to Intel, NSA, NCTC, and some of the other intelligence apparatuses were funded. So we passed those out of the House. The Senate is yet to take those up. So those 4 bills are out there. Out of the 12, we still have 8 appropriations bills to pass. We won't get those done in September. What does that mean? That means government shuts down on September 30th or October 1st at midnight of September 30th if we don't fund government. And we're not going to get all 8 of these remaining appropriations bills done. That means we're going to get back on a continuing resolution. You've heard the word CR. It's not a great way to fund government, is just continue what you've been funding. We really ought to break government into those 12 steps and really have some impact and input on how we fund government, what we fund, and the line items. That was what you would do in an appropriations bill, but we're not going to get that opportunity. Now we're going to have another CR. Hopefully it won't be that contentious. Hopefully it will last for a whole year from September 30th or October 1st rather to September 30th. That's what I would like to see. Because some of the biggest fights we've had in Washington have been over these CRs that nobody likes. But yet that's what we keep going back to, and how we keep funding government is through a CR. We really need to get back on the regular order appropriations process. What I think will happen with the CR is they'll pass a short-term CR, probably from September 30th or October 1st rather, until sometime in December, right before Christmas. Around the 16th or so of December. What does that mean? That means everybody's ready to go home for Christmas. They're not really focused on wanting to stay there and work on all the appropriations bills. We'll be back on another CR or an omnibus, and that's how the powers that be, the leadership, tries to force members of Congress to do something that they normally wouldn't do, and that's vote for something right before we go home for Christmas. It's just a bad way to govern, it's a bad way to operate, but yet that's how we've been operating for the past 7 years, and it's unfortunate. I hope we will have enough political pressure on our leadership to fund government for the whole year, because that whole year funding helps Savannah River site with continuity. Regardless of what the numbers are, it's continuity. It's not peaks and valleys and uncertainty. And it helps the Department of Defense in letting contracts for some of their suppliers. Is a whole year appropriations process versus the start and stop aspect of short-term CRs. And it's just a bad way to do business, and I hope we can get that done. But we do have fund government by September 30th to avoid a government shutdown. But we also have something to do by the end of September, is a debt ceiling increase. The nation has maxed out its credit card, so to speak, and we're going to have to go back to the bank and ask for a credit limit increase. So our credit limit right now is about $20 trillion, and we've maxed that out. But yet we still have deficit spending, so we're going to have to borrow money to make up the shortfall in our spending. That means we're going to have to borrow that money, and we're going to need a debt ceiling increase. And there's going to be a talk about doing a clean debt ceiling increase. Just having the bank raise our credit limit on the nation's credit card so we can go back and spend money without putting any limitations or criteria on it at all. Now, I don't know how about you and your businesses, but when I went and borrowed money at my bank when I was in private business, it was okay to borrow money. And I'm not knocking having to borrow money short-term or long-term. But when you go to the bank, you have to show the bank a business plan. Tell them what you're borrowing the money for. Tell them how you're going to spend it. And most importantly, tell them how and when you will pay them back. And if you keep rolling over that line of credit, eventually they're going to say, no, you hadn't paid any on the principal. We need you to start reducing the principal. Well, the nation hadn't reduced its principal. We continue to borrow, racking up over $20 trillion in debt, and that's a huge number. And so I hope that as we deal with the debt ceiling increase, that we will start addressing the need to borrow money in the first place. What is driving our deficit spending, causing us to borrow money in the first place? And what can we do to start making cuts, whether they're short-term or long-term, to get our fiscal trajectory in order so at some point in time we don't have to borrow any money? Hopefully the economy will grow. Hopefully we'll get tax reform and other things that will do that, and we'll have more tax revenue to the government. We'll increase the income side. But we also have to work on the expense side, because there are a lot of things that are on automatic pilot that we need to address. And so I hope we can do that in the debt ceiling, but I promise you, based on 7 years of doing this, I doubt we'll get anything. We'll probably have a clean debt ceiling increase and just continue to borrow money. And that's unfortunate. But I can tell you there will be a number of us fighting in the trenches to try to do something like cut, cap, and balance. Cut spending, cap spending, and let's get our budget back in balance the way businesses and households have to operate. Because just because we're the federal government, just because we've got the Treasury, doesn't mean that it's okay to spend money like there's no tomorrow. Because you're putting that burden of repaying that debt onto our children and our grandchildren and their children. Because 20 trillion plus is a big number that we have to pay back. And in a rising interest rate environment, as interest rates go up, we as a nation will be paying more on the interest on our debt at some point, 2023, 2024, which isn't too far away. We'll be paying more just in interest payments on our debt, assuming interest rates go up, than we spend on DOD, the Department of Defense, and Medicare. So that's a big part of the spending puzzle is the interest. And that's not paying the principal back at all. That's paying interest only. And so we need to get our budget in order so we can start paying back that debt and going back in the other direction. I hope we can. Other things we've got coming up, we've got flood insurance renewal, and a lot of realtors are in the room. That's important, mortgage lenders and whatnot. Flood insurance, that program, I think all that's been worked out, and we will get flood insurance, that federal program renewed. We also have FAA reauthorization to reauthorize the Federal Aviation Authority. So all the air traffic controllers and whatnot are still using some old DOS-type systems. We need to bring the FAA into the 21st century with new systems, new technology. But the variable there is, what does that mean for the local airport, like the one over here, the downtown airport, and fixed base operators in Edgefield and Lawrence and Saluda and Greenwood, some of the small regional airports where they have an FBO and they have a lot of pilots flying with visual flight rules or VFR who may be affected by what we do with FAA reauthorization and air traffic control. So I hear from the small pilots and the small airports, and also understand what we need to do to modernize our system and bring it into the 21st century. So we've got that coming up. Hopefully we'll get an infrastructure bill. We know in South Carolina how important infrastructure is. We see our roads and bridges crumbling, decaying. The state's dealt with that this year, but there is a federal component of the federal highway system. There's also a federal component to a thing called the Port of Charleston that needs deepening and widening to handle the 21st century ships that are bringing a lot of containers in, those post-Panamax ships, and the post-Panamax ships that may be coming. Federal government needs to help the state of South Carolina, help the Port of Charleston continue with that project, and I think it's on track, but we need to make sure that that is done. The last thing I'll talk about before I get to taxes is DOD, the Department of Defense. So in my 7 years in Congress, during one of the debt ceiling increases, we actually had what's called sequester, or sequestration. It's a fancy Washington word for across-the-board spending cuts. So we cut government spending on the discretionary side of government spending. There's two sides to government and how they spend your tax dollars. Discretionary spending and mandatory spending. Mandatory spending is about 2/3 of all government spending, and it's mandated by laws that are on the books that the federal government spends money in a certain way. That could be Medicare, VA, Social Security, Obamacare has some mandatory in it. A lot of those programs that are over there on the mandatory side that we never touch. Okay, we haven't delved into the mandatory spending since I've been there, maybe nibbled around the edges. When we talk about budgets, we talk about CRs, we talk about spending, and all the fights we have in Washington, we're talking about 1/3 of government spending. So do the math of about $4.5 to $5 trillion spending plan for the nation. Only about 1/3 of that is what we deal with on a regular basis. So on the discretionary side. So what happened with sequester is they did across-the-board spending cuts on the discretionary spending only. So when you do across-the-board cuts, and we ought to be smarter than that, use a scalpel and go in and find the waste, fraud, and abuse first, and then find the programs that are outdated or outlived their usefulness, start ending some of those desks at the Department of Agriculture and other places, and really start making some targeted cuts, and then we can figure out where we want to spend money and where we don't as a nation. But there's some easy things, I say easy, for Congress anyway, some low-hanging fruit that we ought to go after. But what happened with sequester is across the board, and if you look at all the different spending categories, there's one of them that's much broader than the other, and that is defense or military spending for this nation. So when you do across-the-board cuts, you cut that program disproportional to the others because it is the largest spending on the discretionary side. So what happened? Our military got decimated. Now, we have to replace ships and airplanes. You've seen the news this week because of the North Korea thing. There's too many B-1B bombers, there's too many FA-18 Super Hornets, there's too many Ospreys, there's too many other air platforms that aren't able to fly right now because they haven't had the money to maintain their maintenance schedule, and they haven't had the money to maintain the training schedule for the pilots to get in those cockpits. So we've got a readiness issue with equipment, we've got a readiness issue because of sequester in just the men and women that can operate an aircraft carrier. So when an aircraft battle group comes back from overseas, whether it's the Persian Gulf or whether it's the Pacific, they come back into port, and that next crew gets on that battle group on whichever ships, and they've got to reload some different equipment that they feel like they need. And they need to go out, make sure the ships are ready, do some sea trials, make sure that those seamen can actually operate their post and do their job on those ships. That's called readiness, sea trials. We're out of rotation due to sequester on those sea trials and readiness. That means there's a delay between the time that aircraft battle group gets back out in the ocean to protect national interests wherever they may be in the globe. So we're in this cycle that we've got to get out of, and that's where I need 12-month funding as a CR, and we need to put some money, increase funding for military to get back to that sequester number. Because when we talk about military, everyone wants to think about tip of the spear. They want to think about the bombs and the bullets and what's going on out there in Iraq and Syria and in Afghanistan. But there's a lot of things that support that overseas contingency operation. Food services, housing, fuel, and all the other things that go into that have been cut as well as the bombs and bullets and whatnot. So military equipment and tip of the spear and supported tip of the spear type stuff as well. So sequester hurt, we need to revisit where we were with sequester. That's something I support. And so let's just shift gears real quick and talk about tax reform, which I believe we'll get by the end of the year. We've got to get a budget first, so we can use reconciliation that only requires 51 votes in the Senate. And because I don't believe we're going to get 60 votes in the Senate, so we're going to have to use the of budget reconciliation. What does that mean? Hopefully flatter, fair, and simpler. Hopefully we'll drop individual and corporate tax rates down to where they're fair, they're competitive, even with our neighbor to Canada, to the north. Competitive rates so that you keep more money and your businesses can keep your more money that you earn. To reinvest that money either in the market, in yourselves, in your savings account, in your children, in your home for deferred maintenance, or in your business to expand equipment, physical plant, other things, so that we can help put Americans back to work. More Americans working, less Americans relying on the federal government for some part of their daily subsistence. I'd rather them have a job. When they have a job, they're paying taxes. When they're paying taxes, that's more income to the government and lessens that deficit. You see how it all works. So I hope we can get some sort of tax reform that will affect every American in their pocketbook so they can keep more of their hard-earned money. Whether you're a S-Corp, a C-Corp, an LLC, or just an individual taxpayer in this country, try to allow you to keep a little more money in your pocket should help the economy. Because chances are you're going to spend that money in the economy, either with a contractor doing deferred maintenance on your house that you put off, purchasing something, whether it's a rifle to deer hunt with or whether it's an automobile. Spending some money in the economy will help put other Americans to work, I believe. So I hope we get tax reform. That's something that I think is long overdue. It's been over 31 years since we've had major tax reform in this country, and it's past time. Now, a couple of last things, and then I'll shut up and ask some questions. I'm very energy-minded. I believe in American energy independence. We've had this issue with SCANA and SCNG on the nuclear power plant. That's unfortunate because I really believe in the nuclear renaissance in this country. I think nuclear power plants provide that 24/7 baseload, always-on power that we need to turn the engines of the economy. There's only a few sources of energy that do that. That's nuclear power, that's hydropower, that's gas-fired power plants. Everything else has some sort of intermittency with it, and they ought to be part of the mix. But if we want that always-on, 24/7 baseload power, we need it with good, reliable sources, natural gas. I could say coal and diesel, but we've kind of moved away from that. I'm talking about sources that are more applicable to today: nuclear power, hydro, and natural gas-fired power plants. So I want to see South Carolina play as a part in that energy mix in South Carolina. That's our off-coast area. That's over the horizon. I would love to see us do some exploration out there and find out what may or may not be out there. If we find oil off the coast of South Carolina, that's a conversation we can have on whether South Carolina wants to participate in harvesting those resources and playing a part in our energy independence. But what if, after seismic work is done out there, and they use sonic cannons and they find out what might be in the earth, and these new students from the University of South Carolina, Dr. Knapp's class is learning that 3D and 4D seismic graphs and how to read it and find out what might be there and whether it's harvestable quantities or not, and they find natural gas out there, then I think it's a whole different discussion about natural gas than it might be about oil. So what harm does it do to look and find out what might be out there? Because South Carolina might find that we've got very shallow, easy to recover, huge natural gas fields off the coast of South Carolina over the horizon where you wouldn't see any oil platforms or, drilling platforms or natural gas platforms that produce the gas. You'd have to get in a boat to go out there to see them, where you would see the impacts onshore with the jobs created to support that offshore activity. Those jobs onshore, and guess what? If you do get in a boat to go see offshore drilling, take a fishing rod with you because they're great fish attractors. Because you're helping the fish industry out there as well. Where do they go in the Gulf of Mexico to catch the tuna, the billfish, the dolphin, other pelagics? They go out to the rigs and they fish around those. So anyway, I think we need to have seismic in this state off our coast, find out what might be there, and if it's oil, we'll just consider that a strategic energy reserve if we don't decide to harvest it. Because there may be a day, if there's another world war, we may have to go get that in order to survive. But if there's natural gas found, then I think it's a whole different conversation that we have about whether South Carolina plays in that. And the Port of Charleston, Port of Georgetown, be great LNG export terminals, bring that natural gas in, send it to our friends in the Caribbean that are reliant right now on Venezuelan oil and energy, and Venezuela's imploding. So Venezuela's not providing the good, cheap natural resources, oil and gas, to the Caribbean friends and allies, and so they're looking to us to provide energy. Why not send them some natural gas from this country? I think it's the right thing. Europe's relying on a country called Russia. Russia's just a gas station masquerading as a country. They're providing all this natural gas to Europe, and what have they done with that natural gas pipeline? They turned the spigot on and off to influence policy in Europe. The Europeans are fed up with it. Just like OPEC influences us, Russia influences Europe. by turning off during a cold winter or limiting the supply of natural gas as a foreign policy tool that they use. And Europe's looking west. They're looking at the United States going, send us your LNG. You got a bunch of it. It's cheap right now. Send it to us because we want it. We want to lessen our dependence on a foreign source of energy, Russia. And so I think that's a good thing that we should do, and I hope we can. The last thing, you've probably read in the paper, I support a piece of legislation called the Hearing Protection Act. It is a bill that will allow suppressors for firearms to be purchased over the counter, just like any other firearms accessory, although you would have to have a background check just like you would get for a firearm. Right now you have to go through about 8 background checks, $200 tax stamp, 8 months minimum, usually way more than a year, to get qualified to purchase a suppressor, which isn't a silencer. So a lot of people want to say, oh, we just want to make firearms silent. Well, first off, a suppressor does not make a firearm silent. It drops the decibels down to about the level for most firearms of a jackhammer. And I don't know anyone that would say a jackhammer is quiet. So you can still hear it. The sound sensors in New York City or Los Angeles still can triangulate and figure out if a suppressed firearm is used in a crime. And criminals, if a criminal wanted to suppress a firearm, they could already do it. Go to YouTube, you can find the video and figure out how to make it in your garage. It's just not that complicated. And so the reason criminals aren't using it is because it's very difficult to conceal. So let's just think about Hollywood for just a second. James Bond, that's a silencer, that's Hollywood. Does not silence a handgun like his. So he carries a Walther PP8 or whatever it is. I'm having a blank moment right here. But he keeps it here, right? So you see him reach in his coat to pull his pistol out of his holster under his arm. So he's got a pistol, but it's not suppressed. What does he do? He reaches in another pocket and pulls out a suppressor. And you've seen him. He's screwing the suppressor on into the gun before he goes to commit whatever act James Bond wants to commit with a suppressed weapon. And then when he's finished, what does he do? He unscrews it, puts it back in his pocket, puts his weapon here. Why does he do that? Because if you had that suppressor on there, the weapon would be this long, very difficult to conceal from Spectre or the other bad guys in the James Bond movie. So criminals, it would be very difficult to put a suppressed weapon down in your pants trying to go in and commit a crime. That's why they don't use it. So what I'm telling you is we're just trying to recount or dispel a lot of the myths that are out there about suppressors, HPA. What we're trying to do is allow them to be sold because you can buy them over the counter in Europe, just like at the hardware store, just like any other accessory. No background check. You just go in, I want to buy that rifle scope, that sling, and no. It's gentlemanly to shoot a suppressed weapon to let my neighbors not have to hear these loud bangs, so I want to buy a suppressor too. Okay, here's your total. No background checks. Even with the strict gun laws that they have in Europe, you can buy a suppressor over the counter at the hardware store. So why in America are we requiring a $200 tax stamp, an 8 to 18-month time frame to purchase a weapon that's going to drop the sound down to the sound of a jackhammer? Maybe if we can get it done, it'll help the hearing health of so many people like me that have shot a lot of weapons over their years hunting. And they can shoot suppressed weapons and hopefully save some of their hearing. Because there are hunting situations, folks, where you can't wear hearing protection. You can't put earplugs in and hear that turkey gobble. You can't put earplugs in and hear those mallards flying overhead and call to them effectively. You can't put earplugs in and hear the whitetail walking. Now you can put electronic muffs on, but then you got other issues with that as well. So I hope we can get this done, and we'll see if we can. I know there's been a lot of interest in the room, the reason I brought it up, the HPA. So with that, I'll just stop and answer a few questions.
Although not exactly federal, can you just speak to SC&G and Santee Cooper spending $5.5 billion with us ratepayers paying more than abandoning nuclear power? Can you even talk about that? Or?
So, do y'all mind if I take my coat off? Is that not? Not that that question heated me up, it's just warm in here. So, Santee Cooper, this thing is complicated. It's disappointing to me in that this thing has gotten this far in mothball. A lot of attributing factors. Westinghouse being one of those. Now, Westinghouse is a Richland County company. Now, they don't make the reactors down here, they make the rods, but still, Westinghouse bankruptcy affected that, so there was a lot of uncertainty. And then you had the cost, and when you dig into it, the real cost of it were going to be about 3 times what the proposed cost would be. Now, that's the question I have is why? Why was it going to be 3 times as much? Because we were going to face this as ratepayers in South Carolina affected in some way. We were going to face an issue with higher rates, had the final cost been 3 times higher than projected, and where we are today. So there's 2 things. We were going to face some of that. I think there's a lot of things that the government needs to do, the state government needs to do with regard to SCANA and SENG and whatnot. I think all that's being talked about is not a federal issue. Where the federal side does kick in, there's two areas. One's a nuclear production tax credit. So we, as a delegation, pushed Paul Ryan and them back in the spring and early summer to put a tax extender called the nuclear production tax credit in place, so that allows you to, how you depreciate some of the equipment that you put in a new nuclear reactor. And that bill's sitting over in the Senate. Hopefully Lindsay will push it forward just for nuclear power in general. I don't know how it's going to help this going forward. I'm just not that smart with tax policy and how it's going to affect SCANA with the nuclear production tax credit. The second thing is these energy loans through the Department of Energy. And what the Trump administration, they zeroed it out in their budget, what the Congress will do with those type loans, and whether we even want to allow those type loans to be part of Vogel or part of Jenkinsville going forward. Those are the same loans that were used by Solyndra and a couple of other green energy companies that defaulted, and the taxpayer lost there. So those are the only 2 things I can talk about. I'm like you. I'm a taxpayer and ratepayer in South Carolina, and I'm wondering how all this is going to play out and what that means for us. From the federal part, I'm going to continue pushing for the nuclear production tax credit, because I think if we want to continue with any sort of nuclear renaissance in this country, we're going to need to focus on that, what we can do to incentivize through tax credits like that for capital investment going forward. Here's what I think. I don't believe you're going to find another group of people to invest in another nuclear reactor in this country, because you could get 7, 8, 10 years into it, and then something like this happen, and then it's mothballed. And you're going to have a 80, 70, 60% nuclear reactor and buildings and all that built out there that are just going to rust away. I don't believe you're going to find the investors going forward. And that's a shame, because nuclear power is a good, stable source of many megawatts of electricity generation. So it's going to be replaced now, I guess, with natural gas. And natural gas isn't always going to be as cheap as it is today. So we may revisit this sometime in my lifetime, maybe not. Good question.
Yeah, back there.
One more?
When we talk about
Let's do 2 more. I'm going to go here and then there. How about that? Yes, ma'am.
I'm from.
You want the mic so
Yeah.
everybody can hear this?
Yeah.
There it should be on.
Because I'm gonna brag about you. My family lives in Ware Shoals, and you did a letter for my family when my grandfather died, and your constituent services office is tops, and I appreciate who you hired to run your staff. A lot of people in the Ware Shoals area remember you as a football player who don't look like you, who don't look like a lot of people in this room, and they remember cheering for you on Friday nights. And they really feel left out of the conversation, out of the table, and they believe in your ability to be a voice for them. And I would hope that when you're in your leadership roles and you're at the White House, and there are a lot of positions that are unfilled, that if some of those rooms don't look like your football teams, whether at Ware Shoals or at Clemson, that you would be a voice for people who are not there. Because that should be a clear indication that some talent is left out of the conversation, and some diverse perspectives are left out of the conversations that's really needed. Not just when terrorist incidents happen, like what happened there. This is a conversation that we really need for you to champion on your level, and I appreciate when you do that.
Thank you. We try to have a diversified staff. One thing about, he's over there. One thing about a 21st century congressional office that is different than historical congressional offices that we found is that we don't necessarily need physical locations in so many different places for people to come in and have meetings. Because of these devices that we carry and the connectivity with so many people 24/7 on an ongoing basis, then the people don't have to wait for the congressman to come and stand before them and talk with them. You can get it in real time, and you should if you're not a friend of mine on Facebook, social media at all. We do it in real time about what's going on up to date as it happens. Also, our staff, they're getting in their car and they're going out in the community. When I'm in Washington, they're going out in the community and they're meeting with all the different groups that we need to meet with. Ones that have requested, but not always just ones that requested. Drop-bys, just like you do in sales. Go by and see, just to kind of pick up on what's going on at Joe's Ice Cream Parlor and the folks that go there. What's going on at the churches. What's going on with Meals on Wheels and that sort of thing. And when they do those meetings, and Rick can attest to this, they're sending something back to him that's being disseminated throughout our whole staff in a real-time basis, not waiting for a memo to be mailed or faxed. It's all happening in real time. Because we're operating our office in a 21st century and we're trying to operate it that way. And so listening to the constituents takes so many different forms now. And we all know how social media has played into everything, whether it's the Arab Spring in North Africa and the Middle East, or whether it's Charlottesville, or whether it's Ferguson, or Baltimore, or 9/11. Social media is impacting and driving the equation, and we're responding. We're responding to it. Because there's a whole group of millennials out there, that's the only way they want you to respond. They don't want you to come see them at their business. They'd rather my sons don't even want me to call them anymore. Dad, you calling? Is something up? Why didn't you just send a text? So this is the environment that I think Congress is having, congressmen and women are having to adapt to and operate in at this point in time. And we're trying to embrace it and do the best we can. I'm 51, so I'm not well beyond a millennial. But it's something we've embraced as well as a communication tool. So we don't have to wait for the congressman to come back in and talk at a Rotary to find out what's going on in Washington. You can do it in real time. And during that real time posting on, say, Facebook, I'll use that, yeah, we'll put the issue, here's what's going on with the appropriations bill on X, Y, Z, and we do that at 2 o'clock. And then we have a bunch of questions from constituents. And so I or my staff, it's not always me, but a lot of times it's me, will answer those questions in real time, immediately. They don't have to wait to send a letter in or email something in, snail mail, email, fax. They can do it all right there. And it's all in real time. Because I can tell you, we're always, just about, Saturday I was working on my yard and all that. When the whole thing in Charlottesville was going on, I didn't find out about it until later. So, because I went in front of the TV on Saturday. I was actually cutting grass and cleaning pools and doing all the things that Dad's supposed to do around the house as a father and a husband. So, but yeah, we try to do that. But I appreciate your bringing that to my attention. We probably need to do a better job. Real quick, you good? We'll talk afterwards. God bless you guys. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're not gonna have song this afternoon. We're over time, but Congressman will be here if you'd like to come and say hello. Thank you for being here today, and we will not be meeting next week. The eclipse is next week, so enjoy the eclipse. Wear your sunglasses.